All right. You ready, Sam?
Yes.
I told I wouldn't start the presentation without Sam. So now that he's here, we can start. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming out today. We really appreciate it. My name's Tim Corcoran. I am the Director of Planning for the City of South Bend. We have a team here from Department of Community Investment, Elizabeth Meredek in the back, and Andrew Netter, who have helped organize this. And we have a team, we have a initial team from a design firm called Opticus Design from Berkeley, California. Megan, who's off to the side here, she'll be talking to you in a moment. They know South Bend a little bit. They're from an unnamed university that not too far from here. But I just want to welcome you to the kickoff of what we're calling the Portage and Elwood Neighborhood Center Visioning Workshop. Tonight is the first part of a two-part process. So tonight is really about the kickoff of this process. It's about telling you what the process will be, why we're here, and what sort of ways that you all can engage with us in helping look at what the future of this site might be. The second part will be in May, and you'll receive, in the same way that you found out tonight, we're sending out flyers, we're putting a Facebook invite, and there's some flyers actually, Liz, there's some flyers out already for you to take home that gives you a schedule of events that start on May 6th and run through May 9th, I believe. It's a 4-day intense workshop where more designers come out, and we'll be here in this site. We'll be looking at testing different ideas and using feedback from tonight and from other times where you can talk to us to help inform those designs. So why are we doing this today, and why is it important? Now, on my very first, I grew up in South Bend, but I moved away for about 13 years. And on my first day back to work, my first day here as Director of Planning, I drove down Portage Avenue. And I came to the intersection of Portage and Elwood, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a really interesting place. Now, in my previous life, I may not have understood why it's important to have neighborhood centers, but through the work that I have done and the new perspective that I had, I thought, this is a great place. This is awesome. Like, where does this happen in South Bend, right? This is probably the only true neighborhood center, like that's right in the smack dab in the middle of 4 neighborhoods where you've got a supermarket, you've got a pharmacy, you've got a couple other things. That's really a focal point for multiple neighborhoods. And that, when you look at it from taking a step back, there's a lot of great pieces of the puzzle that if I were to design a new place, I'm an urban designer by my background, I'd want parks, schools, a supermarket, you might have heard of the new coal line trail that the city will be building by 2020. All the pieces of a great place are here. But for a lot of reasons, maybe it's not working as well as it should. And we know that the format has changed there. The retail plaza has recently been sold and it's under new ownership. And what's the future of the Drury site? It's an important part of the history, but of course now there's a lot of bricks there. There's a few remaining buildings, but we got to start thinking about, what more than just clean up the site. All right, and thinking about the long-term future. And that I really saw this as kind of a transitional time in this place, and it feels like this is the right time to really start to get into creating that vision, that long-term vision for this area. And so it's important to have that conversation with everybody. And so we've also have some council members here, Regina Preston-Williams and Council President Tim Scott. And I'd like to have them come up and just say a few little words. And I also want to note Karen White is in the audience as well. So don't want to forget you, Karen. And if you would just maybe say a few things about what this place means to you and what some of your interests are.
I think first I want to say
Wow, what an amazing group of people we have here tonight. It's just so exciting to hear this, see this place completely packed out. And I'm just kind of curious, like, how many people have been here? Show of hands, like, kind of new to the area. Who's new? Who's new? Oh, not a whole lot. So we've got, how many people have been here for like 10 years? Like in this area, frequent? 10, hold them high. Okay, 20 years? 30 years? 40 and 50 years, y'all just need to stand up and we just need to right. Woo! I see you in the back over there. All right, yes. There you go. How long?
I've been here for a long time.
A long time.
I've been here about 70 years.
Wow, all right. Do we have door prizes? We should have door prizes.
I wish we did. Next time.
I just want to say I'm just so excited because this is a wonderful opportunity, whether you're brand new, and maybe especially if you've been here for 70 years, 50 years, because you've seen this place go through quite a transition. I know just in my life, you know, Measle Grove, are you kidding me? Like, I learned to play tennis there, right? I played football on that field, and you know that merry-go-round that got you so sick and you just, you know, you keep getting on it? I don't know. But the idea that we have an opportunity to have input into the next phase of what this is going to be. I understand, you know, neighborhoods, they take kind of a natural course. So even though we're kind of maybe at one of those points where, you know, we've maybe been forgotten or we just haven't, you know, not a lot of stuff happening, but we know it's now we're on the upswing, right? So the idea that we have an opportunity, I just want to thank the city for organizing these opportunities, because this is what it's about. It's about bringing people together and having the chance to really drive what's going to happen in our neighborhood. So for us and for our young people coming in the future, that's what tonight's about. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm excited. And I'm just so thankful to be able to represent all of you guys in this process. Thank you.
So Karen White is one of your at-large members. You have two other ones, Gavin Furlick and John Vorty. So it's good to see Karen out as well. This is typical for those out-of-towners. This is typical of the near Northwest neighborhood. This is the way this group in this neighborhood really does things. I'm not going to say a lot because it's about what you guys have to say is what we want to hear and understand. But much appreciated. I think the big key is the success of this area that we're going to talk about tonight. You know, the plaza area and the Drury's part. It is under private ownership, both parts. But I think the good thing is you're all here to help those owners understand what this market demand is, and that's probably from you guys. It is a really neat area. There's so much upside potential that can happen here. As I've always said, it's about quality of life, and everybody deserves a good quality of life. Everybody needs to be a good neighbor, and it's the good neighbors that give feedback, whether it's deserved or not, you know, whether they want to hear it or not, but the feedback back to the owners are our neighbors of what's going on and what we see. What I love about this group is you don't pull punches and you tell the truth of what's going on. So I appreciate you guys all coming out. This area literally is part of the 1st District, 2nd District. So we're here and we want to hear what you have to say. So thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much. So with that, I'll introduce Megan. She is from Opticus Design. They're, like I said earlier, they're from Berkeley, California. Now, she has spent 5 years in South Bend at a local university, to be unnamed, no. And she will be doing the presentation tonight. But there is, at the end, some opportunity to, she'll explain what the Post-it notes are for, and some other little things that we're going to have you do before we let you out of the room, okay? So with that, Megan, if you want to take over and let this roll.
Thanks, Tim, and council members, Tim and Gina. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, if you can't hear me, just raise your hand and I'll turn this back on.
It's on.
Oh, it's on. Okay, well, it's not working, so too bad. Okay, well, thank you all for coming tonight. This is a great turnout. It's one of the best turnouts I've ever seen. As Tim said, I'm Megan from Opticos Design, and Oh, I have to turn this on, that would help too. All right, so tonight I'm gonna talk for about 30 minutes and then we're gonna get into a workshop and we'll start to hear from you about what you think about the neighborhood center. So I'm gonna start off by talking about what the project is, and then what is a charrette, what is this workshop coming up in May, and then just start to throw out some ideas and food for thought about things that could possibly happen, and then we'll get your feedback on that. So we'll get right into it. So just to start out, in case you're not familiar with the project area, what we're calling the neighborhood center, this is the project area outlined in blue. We have Portage and Elwood to the northeast, and then we have, it's bordered by Wilbur to the west and Vassar Avenue to the south. And as Tim said, we also have the coal line trail cutting through the eastern portion of the project. We have the retail plaza up here to the north, and the Drury site, and then of course Maple Grove Park. One of the neat things about this area is that it's at the center of multiple neighborhoods, which you can see up here, and probably most of you live in those neighborhoods. So it's a pretty exciting place to be working. So some of the reasons why we're studying this area, and these are the goals that the city put forth at the start of the project. They're also found on the project website. We're looking to establish a community vision for the center, so that's where you all come into play. We're looking to facilitate revitalization of underutilized and underdeveloped center, ensure attractive and well-designed development, so not just any development, but something that improves the city and neighborhood. We're looking to ensure desirable, multifunctional, and unique development, something that's exciting and will attract people to come to this area. Generate private investment and interest in the center, and then also look at some improvements to public infrastructure. So just to review the project schedule, tonight is just the beginning of the project. This is our opening workshop for you all to learn about what we're doing here and get some initial input from you. And then later on in May, we'll have this visioning workshop that will be open to the public, which I'll get into in a little bit. So you've already found out who most of the design team is. So we have working with the city of South Bend, of course. And then my firm is Opticos Design. We're an architecture, urban design, and planning firm out of Berkeley. And most of us actually have went to school in South Bend, so we have that connection, and most of us are Midwesterners also. And then we'll have an economic consultant with us, Glenn Kellogg. He's an expert in looking at revitalizing centers like this, and actually has owned and revitalized the center in Rochester, New York. Very similar to this one. And then finally you all are going to help us design this center. We really can't do this without your input. So just to start thinking about what can happen here and what your vision is for the area, we gave you 2 Post-it notes to start. So on one of your Post-it notes, I want you, on the blue Post-it note to start, we're gonna think about what comes to mind, one word or phrase when you think of this area today. So it can be anything. And then on the orange Post-it note, I want you to write one word or phrase that comes to mind when you think of the future. So if there were no constraints, all possibilities are open, what would you like to see happen here in 20 years?
Does anyone need a pen?
Does everybody have a Post-it note? Raise your hand if you don't have a Post-it note. Okay, we did a good job of that. Anybody need a pen?
What goes on the blue?
So on the blue, that's the today. Yeah, thank you for that. Blue is today, and just think of the orange, the bright one is for the future. Looking for a bright future. And when you're finished, if you can pass them down the center, and then we'll have Liz and Andrew come pick them up. And so what we're going to do with these is we're going to put them on posters over there, and you can take a look when you leave and see what everybody wrote. And I'm going to take that back to California. We're going to look at it, and those will start to be some of those visioning words that we use to guide the design process in May. Like we're finishing up. Okay. So I wanted to talk through what's actually going to happen in May. We are calling this a public workshop, but another word that you'll hear me use is charrette. And one question is, what is this fancy word that we use called a charrette? And a charrette is just a fancy word for a public design workshop that's multi-day. And some myths that people have about charrettes, if you've heard about them before, is that they're these short workshops, or we come in with the idea of what we're going to build already. We already know what we want, and we're just telling you what we think is best for you. And the other myth is that you need to be there the whole time. You need to quit your job and just be there the whole time with us, which is not true. A real charrette includes co-design, so that means that we can't do this without your input. There's multiple feedback loops, so we'll come up with designs and then present it to you and get your input, and then go back and keep doing this reiterative process until we come up with a vision that's something that we can all agree at least on a part of it. The result of the workshop is always based in reality, which is why we have people like Glenn coming on and telling us what's the real feasible solutions in this area. And lastly, we think that it's a really fun activity. And so hopefully you all think that too. We have a lot of fun doing these. So just to walk through the schedule, and this schedule is also going to be on those flyers that you pick up when you leave, so you don't need to write this all down right now. And it's also available on the website here, which is also on the flyers. But basically we're going to start on Sunday, May 6th, and it will run through Wednesday, May 9th. And I'll walk through each of these different activities that are going on through the week. So every day we have open studio, which is basically you can come in. We've basically picked up our office and moved it to South Bend for a week. And we'll be working, like you see in this picture, we'll be working through all different design alternatives, and you can come in and talk to us, tell us what you think, look over our shoulder. And at this charrette, we're going to be doing a 3D model of the site, which is kind of fun. We think it's a great way for people to visualize and really like get into the design process with us, so you can come and move around buildings, make towers, whatever you want. And so that's another fun way you can participate. I just wanted to show, this is a time-lapse video from one of our most recent charrettes where we did this. So you can see everybody and how crazy they get a little bit. So on Sunday night and on Wednesday night, we'll have our opening and closing presentation. And if you have very limited time, which I know you guys are all busy people, these are the most important events to attend. This is where you'll learn what we're thinking about. You can give your input, and then you'll find out about what concepts were developed throughout the week. We'll also have an informal pinup on Monday night. And that's really where we'll pin up all our drawings and everything that we've been working on during the day. And it's just really an informal time for you to come and walk around, and the design team and the city will be available to talk to you. And then on Tuesday, we have this really cool brown bag lunch, so you can bring your lunch. Come sit around the table and talk to Glenn Kellogg, our economic consultant, about his experience in doing some revitalization work and what he thinks that could happen here. And he's also looking for your input. So that'll be an exciting lunch for especially property owners, but it's open to everybody. So now I wanted to jump into the meat of this presentation, which is some food for thought. There's been a lot of ideas that we've been hearing today. We've been talking to different property owners and to our council members and starting to think about what could be possible on this site. So I wanted to start to just throw out ideas, and again, these are no preconceived notions of what will actually happen or what could happen, just opening up some possibilities so that on the charrette we can test and design some different alternatives. One concept I wanted to bring up was think big and think small. So there might be some things where we can make big moves, we can make big changes. There also might be a lot of opportunities for small changes that are more feasible in the short term. And then there also might be places where we don't want to make any changes. We like it how it is. So we can, I wanted to start off with thinking about some small changes. And just because these are small changes, it doesn't mean that they're insignificant. Some of the smallest moves can take the most advantage of sites that are currently underutilized or need to be activated more, and these can actually become catalysts for future projects that are of a larger scale. So some areas that we see right now, that just to start of places that we could see some small scale changes are in the retail plaza, and then we have, of course, the coal line trail. We can take advantage of this great opportunity coming into the area, and then also thinking about Miso Grove Park and some opportunities there. So one example of a small change could be a simple facade improvement. So this could be looking at the existing buildings, maybe not tearing them down because they are still useful and still being used, but we could make them more attractive to people to come to the site, make this a more beautiful space. So this is in, that one did not work. Well, there was a slide there. But this is another example of revitalizing some places and that might be underutilized. So if we start to talk about parking lots, maybe we use all the parking, but maybe the parking isn't used all the time, and what can we do with those parking lots in the times that they're not used as much? So this is an example from another city we worked in, which had parking lots at the front and really this kind of dangerous sidewalk to walk down that's right adjacent to these fast-moving cars. And one of the first changes that we thought about is just putting some simple planting boxes in here to separate the pedestrians from the street, give them more of a feeling of safety, kind of hide this parking lot in the front. And then later on, it might actually become something else. The parking lot might be transformed into an outdoor eating space. So that's just one example. And then if we start to think of these big scale moves, big changes to the site, as Tim mentioned, there's a couple different sites that have had some change in ownership, and so there might be some long-term moves that we can make. As you can see some of these on the stars in here. And what I want to talk about is what kind of development do you think is appropriate? What kind of development do you think would help the surrounding neighborhoods and the city? One thing that I wanted to bring up, and this is not a zoning conversation necessarily, we're just envisioning what could happen, but right now your existing zoning on the site, this is what you see, and the future land use, which comes from your comprehensive plan. And if you're not a planning nerd and you don't know what a comprehensive plan is, the comprehensive plan, which was from 2006, basically gives general guidance to the for zoning and developers and property owners on what was decided, what the site could become based on a long series of community workshops and planning efforts. So you can see there's kind of a disconnect on some of these sites about what the land use could become. So I wanted to talk about some of these different use opportunities. So we could start to think about, what if we keep light industrial in this neighborhood? And what could that light industrial mean? Are there opportunities for it? Is there demand for it? And so these are some examples of light industrial that are currently in the region. But we might also think about what other types of light industrial might be appropriate. Light industrial doesn't mean just one thing. There might be some smaller maker spaces or flex spaces that fit more into the neighborhood scale. We can also think about retail opportunities. There's a trend in retail right now, which Glenn can tell you all about in a couple weeks. But retail is generally shifting towards more of experiential retail. We're shifting away from the large shopping malls and going to more authentic experiences. So this is kind of one end of the spectrum. This is a strip mall in Southern California that was transformed into an incubator space for different types of retail. And you can see they have some temporary retail, and they also have some more permanent retail. There's also restaurants in here, and it really enlivened the space, but people still come and park their cars and come to this space. And another example, this is actually in my neighborhood in Oakland. They took an alley, or it was a parking lot actually, you can still see the striping. And they put a bunch of containers, shipping containers, and tested out whether retail would work in this area, and then later on made it more permanent. And we can start to think about some different housing opportunities in the area. Is additional housing appropriate, and what scale of housing? We might start to think of a different kind of range of housing, maybe not just single family, but we look at some multifamily. And so one of the things that our firm specializes in is what we call missing middle housing. So missing middle housing is still at the house scale. It's about the size of a large house, but it might have multiple units. And one of the things about this is that it provides a range of unit types and different unit types to support different types of people. So you can see this in the yellow is kind of that missing middle, what we call it, and you actually have quite a bit of this in certain parts of South Bend. Here are some examples. And the only reason it's been missing is because current zoning laws often discourage this type of housing. And then here are some other Midwestern examples. As you can see, here's some duplexes, small multiplexes. This probably has about 4 units in it, and this has a little courtyard. So they still fit within kind of that neighborhood scale, not building huge apartment buildings. So another think big, think small move is in Measle Grove Park. And I think my question for you all is, how do you use the park currently? How would you like to use the park? And how do you think that we can get to that level of how you want to use the park? So you might think of activating the space with different improved facilities in the park, pathways, other things like that that can help us connect. You have all these great neighborhoods right around the park, but it's a little bit hard to get there right now. So we might start to think about how we can improve those connections. And one of the great things that we have going for us right now is the Coal Line Trail, which at the southern end of the trail, or at the southern end of the park, is a planned bike station currently, which will already, this is what it looks like today. This is what it could look like based on their plan. And so that will already bring a lot of activity to that area. I also want to talk about the Portage and Elwood intersection. I think this is a really important intersection for people. There's a bus line that comes down Elwood. There's a lot of people who access the Martins and the rest of the retail plaza by bike and by foot, and also by car. So I want you to think about what that experience is when you're driving in your car versus when you're walking versus when you're biking, and how comfortable do you feel, and what improvements, or maybe we want to just leave it the same. So just start to think about some options here. And this is just a small example. This is kind of a similar situation where you had this, even though there was a pedestrian crosswalk here, it was a very unfriendly space towards pedestrians. And so we thought of adding something as simple as some, what we call bulb outs. Kind of tells the traffic to slow down right at the intersection, and added a small median. But all the uses still stayed the same. But that also could provide a catalyst for a change in use, or maybe activating the space a little bit more. And so this is what we had envisioned, changing into a more active pedestrian-related use. So those are just some ideas that I wanted to throw out there, and so now we're going to get into the visioning activity where we hear from you all. We want you all to tell us what you like about the center, what you want to change, what you don't want to change, all of that. So how we do this is, we call this our dot activity, but we're going to be using stars today. So we're going to break out into groups, and I think 6 to 7 people at each table. They can be your friends or they can be strangers, either way. I want you to mark opportunities, constraints, and assets. So opportunities are spaces where you think we could do better here. These are spaces for revitalization. Constraints are areas that you think have a negative effect on your on the center currently, or something that you really want to see change. Assets would be things that you really like and you want them to stay the same, or you just think that it's a great thing in your community. And I also encourage you, when you put a star down, to write also your comment about why you put that there. So don't be afraid, we have markers on the table. You can mark up the maps as much as you want. And I think this works the best when everybody participates. So if everybody can put down at least 1 star in each category at the table, that would be great. And then at the end of this, we'll come back together, and you have to pick 1 person to be your reporter from the table, so you can draw straws, and then we'll have everybody report back, and we can hear what you all think. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. You can
Okay.
go first.
I think the idea, first of all, my name is Sammy Brown,
Nice to meet
and I will watch the book called Citizens United for Better Government. We watch it for the government, school system. We do a lot of things. My thing is this. I like your concept of what you're trying to do, your vision of trying to make this area more attractive.
Yeah.
But my problem is, this is where I got my problem with. Your presentation is very thorough. Where are we going to get the money? First of all, Durkee owns the Jewish property out there.
Right.
Okay. And everyone knows, because I've been watching that for like 3.5, going on 4 years now.
Yeah.
It's going to take quite a bit of money to make that site for your vision. Then also, the timetable to move that substation. They had already cleared some land off, and that's going to affect some houses
Yeah.
over there. Are you going to buy the people out, or are you going to get? I'm quite sure. I talked to one homeowner. Where the substation going to set, it's going to really affect him.
Yeah.
So are you going to offer him like money for his property, or he's going to set that substation
I'm gonna
up?
hand that one out.
Yeah.
Tim.
Could you repeat the question?
The question was about the substation, the moving
Okay.
of the substation across the street, and its potential impact on neighboring properties. AEP is obviously moving that substation. It's for network reliability reasons. I'm not sure about what they do in terms of if there is compensation that is required or is necessary in this particular case, but it is something we can look into with AEP, and whether or not they've even reached out to some of the neighbors. So it's, they did have some community engagement early on in this process, but I haven't seen anything lately about this process, so, but it is something we can follow up with you soon.
Okay, we really like that because I sit down with the homeowner.
Yeah.
See, I know about all this stuff. And the jury's plan really concerns me because there's gonna be quite a bit of money to actually get that site set up in order for you to do something which you're trying to do right now. Are we, the taxpayers, gonna have to pay for that? Or is Mr. Durkee, is he out of the game plan? Do we acquire the land from him yet? Is we in court with him? What are we doing? Because all they're doing is just sitting there right now. And we've been fighting Durkee right now. I done wrote him letters, I had code enforced, writing letters on my behalf to ask him what is his future plan, how long are we gonna keep playing this game, where, and then who owns it? Are we, the citizens of South Bay, gonna take that land and be able to develop? Do we have that type of money? Where are we at with that project?
Right.
And I am, and then I let you have your notes, I am, if you go down and look across the street where that substation gonna go, that house right back to the back, my friend's house comes right up on that substation. And when he bought the property, there was no substation that close to his home.
Right.
So now maybe he don't want a substation there. So you're gonna have to move. Because we already start clearing land for that substation.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, so I would like to know, so when I sit down here with him, he can have a chance to.
Sure. And like I said, we can talk to AP to find out more what their plans are.
Okay. And do we own that jury plant right now?
No, we do not.
We're gonna have to acquire that through the court, or how do we get the land?
Right. Well, typically the city doesn't acquire land unless it goes on to, say, tax sale or something like that, and it's currently up to date in taxes. It has not gone to tax sale. So there is no current plan right now to acquire the property. There are conversations happening about what can be done, and but at the moment the plan is to see what the landowner can do, and I know that's been a slow process, but that's still continuing at the moment, and we are in conversations with him, including code enforcement, our legal team, and others. So I know it's probably not a satisfactory answer in that regard, but part of why we're here is that without any idea about what the community is looking for, how can anybody then go, all right, well, how can I help make that vision a reality, or how can my plans fit into that, or how, can we work out something in which like these things can happen together? So that's really why we're here today. So that will also help guide future city decisions in terms of whether property acquisition is something we want to explore. Is rezoning something we want to explore? What other infrastructure improvements that we can do? How can we take these ideas and then look at how we might be able to implement them over time? So that's why we're all here today. So in terms of what's going to happen immediately on that site, I don't know, but we do know that our preference is that the site is cleared and cleaned by the property owner and not by taxpayer money.
Well, I really appreciate you giving me this information. We're gonna have to go to the council and do some more check. Because we, the taxpayers, we're not gonna take and engage on cleaning their property up. Someone, him or whoever, we're not taking on their tax. If we do, I'm gonna be one of the people who try to fight it, because that's ridiculous. We've been suffering as it is, and we shouldn't have to fit that bill. I don't know what the game plan is, but I appreciate you.
Thanks,
Having me back, but I appreciate you informing me. I'll be willing to be leading that fight,
All right.
because that's what we do, and I don't think it's right that the taxpayer, that's a mass, amount of land, and you clean it up properly, that's gonna cause the taxpayer some hardship.
Agreed. Okay, well, we don't have a whole lot of time, so we want to try to get people to do the exercise that we've got here. We might be able, I'll be floating around, so while you're doing the exercise, you can talk to me or Liz. We've got two other planning staff, Mike DeVita and Chris Dressel, that can also answer some questions.
So when you move to a table, please go to one that has a map and you'll
Yeah.
see pens on it. And a few people might have to bring some chairs with you, but if you move there again, about 6 to 7 people per table, please.
Considering the new traffic, I live very near it. It can barely take the traffic. Rush hour traffic is backed up a lot. All directions, except west, east, get the north, south, and west. I mean, when juries was open, their trucks,